Hi, everybody. Welcome to today's webinar. This is one of our customer success webinars. Today, we're going to focus on sensitive data management. And I'm really excited here today to have Paul Chen, who many of you know, our head of product management at Komprise. Hello, Paul.
Hello, Darren.
And just a couple of housekeeping items before we jump in. This isn't designed to be a marketing webinar. We really want to dive into the things that you care about the most in terms of product adoption and what's new. I will let you know that Bright Talk can be a little kind of funky at times. There is a little setting icon at the bottom. You can update your screen resolution if it's a little blurry, but also you can enlarge the screen. And using the chat panels at the side, we really encourage you, if you're watching live today, to put in your questions, and let's make this as useful and relevant to you all as possible. So let's jump right into the agenda. We're going to talk about the 6.0 release, which just was announced on Friday last week. And we will really spend most of the time in demos of the PII detection, scanner, new capabilities, regex, and keyword scanner, and then a few best practices as you kind of embark on this journey. So as we do that, there's a lot that's come before 6.0, but I'm going to just put up a quick poll question and ask you all about your current situation. Who in your organization is responsible for finding sensitive data today? We have some ideas. We've been talking to customers for a long time about the kinds of things you care about. We'd love to hear from you on today's webinar. Let us know who's responsible, and maybe that's going to change. So, Paul, let's bring you in to talk about a little bit of what's been happening and what's new.
Sure, Darren. As you can see, there's a lot of information on this slide. Komprise has been working on the 5.x version of the product line for about a year and a half, starting with the data storage insights. That was the major feature that came in with 5.0, and we improved that throughout the 5.x product line. But also, we introduced smart data workflows in 5.7. So what you're seeing today is a new release, 6.0. So we've now ended the 5.x product line. Don't be too shy of a .0 release. It's just, for us, it's just another release. We do releases about every 4 to 6 weeks. And for 6.0, it was a good time to change the number because we've been doing 5.x for a while, but also Smart Data Workflows is now general availability. It was first released in early access form in 5.7. We've been maturing it over the past 3 or 4 releases. And so now it's ready for general availability use. That's what I'm going to demonstrate today. And that's why we're excited to talk about the release 6.0.
Quick polling results. We haven't had too many people take it, but you can see it's a little mix of security, data storage, and shared ownership across teams. So please do jump into that poll question and let us know what's the situation in your org. So let's go through what we've been hearing, Paul, over the last really year and a half as we started talking about this potential capability. One was a lot of our customers told us that the value of Komprise, we hear this all the time, being able to search across storage silos is really critical, especially using capabilities like deep analytics. But when it comes to potentially finding data where it shouldn't be, that ability to scan for PII and other sensitive data types, and then to use the deep analytics and data explorer to really find that data and then take action on it is key, right? Not to be able to just identify, which there's many tools out there that do, but then to be able to automate mobility, if and when you find sensitive data, and then maybe copy, confine, do something actionable with that based on the analytics. And then the other piece of feedback we hear a lot about is this ability to classify, to use tags, and then to set policies. That really starts to bring transparency across teams. We're seeing increasingly customers are starting to broaden the use of Komprise and make it part of their ransomware solution, right? To be able to reduce the attack surface because unstructured data is often the weakest link and kind of the easiest way in. So governance, data security, especially increasingly this use case of ingestion, right? Being able to feed the right data into AI services, making sure that there's no data leakage, the wrong data doesn't feed those LLMs. So of just a few use cases we've been hearing about from customers, And now let's jump into kind of what we've done here and what it all looks like.
Sure, Darren, thanks. So in 6.0, Smart Data Workflows has reached general availability, and these are the major features that are available in this new capability. So we have what we call a PII scanner, PII, personally identifiable information, or in the UK and in the EU and the rest of the world, they call it personal data. We have a scanner that can find sensitive data within your documents. So note, this is a bit different for Komprise. For Komprise, up till now, we've always looked at metadata of your data, and now we're actually going to crack open files and look inside files to help you find sensitive data. So we have a PII scanner with multiple predefined types that you can select from. We also have developed a keyword and regex scanner. So this is a more powerful, more general scanner. You can use it to search for specific text. So one great use case, especially for GDPR, you might have a data subject request. Someone needs their data to be updated. Someone needs their data to be deleted. They make the request. You need to be able to find all documents with that person's name in it, or if they've given you some other information like their phone number, or if it's an ex-employee and they're leaving and they want you to delete all their data, you have their employee badge number. You can search for those exact strings across your data estate and find all the documents that that person wants removed. The regex is even more powerful. With the regex scanner, if your organization has specific data types that are definable by a regex, it may not be an international standard or even a national or regional standard, but it's definitely standard within your organization. Then it makes sense to use your own regex scan for that across your documents. That's also useful for PHI. A lot of organizations that are medically oriented have specific patterns for medical record numbers, patient numbers, documents related to insurance for customers. Those things aren't internationally standard, so our PII scanner doesn't know about them, but you can definitely write your own regex to help find those. We also have a third scanner integration available, and that's Amazon Recognition. We had several customers asking for this, where they have images and even videos that Amazon Recognition can help them find particular portions of those images. Now, it is a cloud-based service, and we have integrated with it. There is a charge, of course, so the customer needs to have an account, but with Komprise Smart Data Workflows, you can curate an input data set, send it up to Amazon Recognition, have Recognition do its thing, and then we'll log the results. And I'll talk more about that through our demonstration. Of course, as with any other Komprise feature, there are downloadable reports, there's summaries of all your workflows, there's details of any specific workflow, and we'll give you information about any errors that come up. And then there's a very low-level scanner log that is available to you. We actually audit log every action that we take on every file that we look at. We can write this log to your own desired location. So you can aggregate all those logs on a particular server. You can even upload them to S3. And the log will include information about what sensitive data was found. For each file, we'll list the file name, what we found, what we tagged, and I'll talk more about that, but also an obfuscated version of that sensitive data. So we'll show most digits or most characters as just asterisks, but we'll leave the last 4 characters, for example, in plain text, so that you can help verify whether the sensitive data that we found is actually sensitive data. And this can be very useful for helping weed out false positives.
All right, so Paul, as you're going to the demonstration and really dive into a lot of the things you just talked about, I want to remind people there's a lot of folks on the call, so use the chat panels. We have some questions that have already come in, but let's get you into the demo, and then I'll start weaving in some of those questions a little bit after, because I think some of them you're actually going to answer the answers become clear as you demonstrate the product.
Certainly. So now I am sharing my demo. Is that visible?
Yes.
Perfect. So I've logged into Komprise. This is a demonstration version. It's on version 6.0, but it's actual product. You can see our standard heat map of data access. So we scan all the data that you point us to, and then Komprise will then categorize the files by their access time and give you a very nice high-level picture of how much data you've got and how warm or cold it is. So you can see here in this demo, there's some data. 4.5% is quite hot, been accessed within the last month. But over time, you can see that we quickly give you visibility into how much data you have that is potentially quite cold. And of course, that's one of the main use cases for Komprise, is helping customers control their storage costs by helping them tier data that no one's actually using. so they can get it off their primary storage, get it into cheaper secondary storage, free up that primary storage for other uses, avoid having to buy more primary storage in the next budgeting cycle. So this is a great use of Komprise that a lot of customers are taking advantage of to help control their data costs. What I'm going to demonstrate for you now is this new area called workflows. So I click the workflows tab and I'll see an overview of all the workflows that I've got running. Currently, I've got 3 workflows defined. 2 are completed. You can see they were one-time workflows. And then I have a third workflow, which is running on a schedule. It ran once last night and it'll run again in 2 days and 16 hours. I have it running on a 3-day schedule. We can look at the details of any particular workflow by clicking on its name. Here I've got data subject request Robert Smith. So this is an example of where an ex-employee, say Robert Smith, has made a request for the organization to delete all of his data, find it and delete it. So the workflow is called DSR Robert Smith, data subject request from Robert Smith, ex-employee. You can see on the run that 6.35 million files were processed. We actually found 93,473 files that had the string Robert Smith in it or his employee badge number, 12-00000453. All those documents are then tagged with specific tags, and the tags in Komprise are always key value pairs. So files are either tagged with the key DSR and the value Robert Smith if we found his name in a document. If instead we found his employee badge number, we're tagging those files with the key DSR and the value Robert Smith employee. These tags are defined by you when you configure the workflow, and I'll show you that in a minute. But you can see very quickly the power of these workflows. You can search for specific strings, you can search for regex, you can search for sensitive data. Komprise will scan all the data and then tag it with tags of your desire. So let's go back now to the main table and I'll add a new workflow. I'll show you how simple this is. It's a very simple 4-step wizard. First, you select where Komprise should scan the data. Now you have a couple options here. By default, you can navigate through your storage and pick either shares or even down to directories on where you want Komprise to search. So here I've got an Isilon cluster, I've got a NetApp cluster. I can dive down into access zones, I can dive down into SVMs, I can go down into shares, and I can select an entire share if I want, or I can be even more targeted because, of course, when you're opening up files, the more files you open, the longer the job is going to run. That's just a fact of physics. So if I can narrow down where I think data will be, then I can actually make the runs go faster. So there's a very good strategy on dividing and conquering your data state on how you search for data. Now, in this particular case, I may want to look in the QA directories. There should be no sensitive data in QA. It's all test data. They better not be using any production data, but let's just make sure. So I'll select this directory that I can search in. Alternatively, I could have used a deep analytics query. Now, deep analytics is another capability within Komprise. It allows you to search for any set of files in your data estate by using filters based on file metadata. So you can search for file sets based on where they are, based on partial or complete file names, partial or complete directory names. You can search by file sizes. You can search by file types or extensions. You can search by owners. You can search by the last access time and the last modified time. There's lots of fine-grained search capability in deep analytics. You can then search and find specific types of data, save those queries, and then those queries show up here that you can use to drive your workflow search. So in this case, there may be some engineering data query that I've already created. The data is owned by engineering. There shouldn't be any sensitive data here either. So this could also drive a workflow. So I'll leave this up as the example. We'll use a query to very fine tune to find the input data that I want Komprise to scan. I click next. Now here are my choices for the different scanners that we have. Amazon recognition, of course, requires your own Amazon credentials, and we'll be sending your files up to the cloud for recognition to work on. The keyword and regex scanner and the PII scanner both run in our observers. And if you are familiar with our architecture, of course, you know that the observers are virtual appliances that run behind your firewalls. They run near your data storage because these are the workhorses of the Komprise architecture. These are the agents that review, scan your data, review your data, and in this case, searching your data for either keywords and regexes or for PII. So let me just spend a few minutes talking about the keyword and regex scanner. Here again, you can search for exact strings. So in case you have a data subject request from John Smith, you can exactly search for his name. You could add other search terms if you happen to know, again, his employee badge number. It might be a slightly different number than Robert Jones's. You can search for that as well. So you can search for exact strings and text, especially useful for data subject or any kind of thing that your teams are looking for. If they're looking for experiments from a certain machine, if they're looking for data about a particular account, and you have the account number or an insurance policy number, etc. Those are all things you can search for exactly. This also admits the possibility of regexes. And I'm not very good with regex, but you might have some kind of regex that does some kind of search, and it looks for things within your data state based on your regexes, your patterns of IDs for employees, for machines, for policies, for cases, etc. If you can define a pattern by regex, you can search for it here. It's very broad, it's very general, it's very powerful. In these cases, when you write regex, it's pretty hard to decipher what it means just by looking at it. So you can always add a description of my particular regex so I can later understand what I was trying to search for. In the third case, and this is the case that I'll actually use in this demo, we have a PII scanner. Again, this runs on premises on the observers, so your files never leave your estate. We will open those files and look for them. We have enabled 68 default different types of PII that you can search for. And again, of course, since we're searching files for content, the more things you search for will have an impact on the performance. So it's a trade-off. Obviously, we would like to search for all types of PII and find them, but we have to realize that that will make the searches much more run longer. They'll run much more slowly. So you want to be strategic and decide what you are focused on first to find. So if you're a US-based company, you may be looking, for example, for US-based information first, like US passport numbers, US social security numbers. You may, for example, also be interested in generic email addresses and maybe generic credit cards. So you could search for these 4 things. Obviously, you have many more to choose from. And our library actually has on the order of 120 or so different definitions. By default, we disabled some of the ones that we think may not be interesting now. The African continent passports and national IDs, the Asian continent passports, IDs. We can enable those on request. Just to keep things simpler now, in this demo, we've disabled them and in the product.
Hey, Paul.
Yeah.
You might pause for a question that came in. Can Komprise scan image data, for example, a PDF for sensitive information?
Yes, I saw that question. So that's a great question. It's very important to understand at this point, Komprise does only support certain file types. And in order to get the feature out quickly and to be hopefully the most useful, when we polled prospective customers of this feature, they said, we think mostly the sensitive data will be in text-based documents. So in other words, Office files, Word docs, PowerPoint presentations, even Excel spreadsheets, PDFs, again, very text-centric, and any file that is text-based. So we don't look for extensions for that, but essentially anything that Java opens up and finds the MIME type is text. So those are the file types that are supported. Images are not yet supported. We do have an optical character recognition module in our PII scanner. We've been doing extensive testing on it. We don't think it's quite ready for you yet. We don't like the accuracy or the inaccuracy that it currently has. It needs some tweaking in the algorithms. And also the performance needs a bit of work as well. So we're working on that. We'll make it available as soon as we can. We understand that people often scan their driver's license or their passport and send it into HR, things like that. But that brings up another point. When you're searching for sensitive data, you don't have to search where it's supposed to be because you're already controlling it in those places. There's no point wasting time scanning where it already belongs. And HR, of course, will have all of that data. People will scan things and send it in, but there's no need to search there. You know it should be there. So you need to focus on places where it's not supposed to be. And for that, we thought, let's focus on the document types first that have text, and then we'll add more over time.
And this one came in, you answered it, I think a little earlier, but I think it's worth repeating. Where does the scanning occur? Are you sending my data to the cloud?
Exactly. So when you're using either of the Komprise text-based scanners, keyword and regex or PII, those are running on our observers, which are located behind your firewalls, on your premises, close to your data storage. So your files are not leaving your data state. They stay in place on the storage. We're just using file system calls to open files, read files, and then close those files. So they stay on your premises. We are not sending any data into the cloud with our keyword and regex scanner and with our PII scanner.
Okay, great.
So after I've selected which types of PII that I want to scan for, now this is really the workhorse part of our workflow. What's going to happen is Komprise, once you start the workflow, will scan all this input data. It will then look for the PII that you've configured. And when it finds files that match those PII types, we're going to tag those files with Komprise tags. Komprise tags live in our deep analytics database. We call it the global file index. So these are not affecting your files at all. We're not writing any metadata on your files. We're not changing your files whatsoever. They stay exactly the way they are. And in fact, some people have asked, when we read the files, what happens to the access time? We touch that up. Komprise always does this with all the other capabilities that Komprise has. Whenever we touch a file, we touch back its access time so it looks like we were never there. So once we find those files and we find sensitive data in it, we're going to create tags in our database. This is where you specify what tags you would like Komprise to use. And again, a Komprise tag is always two parts. It's a tuple, it's a key and a value. All you have to do here is supply us the key. And you can see if you have keys in your global file index already, we'll show you those and you can pick from them. You also have the capability, if you like, to create a new key. You can create anything you like. But in this case, I'll just use this nice PII tag that already exists. That's the key that will be used on all the tags. As sensitive data is found in the files, the values of our tags will become the type of PII or sensitive data that we found. So if we found an email address, the file will be tagged PII, and then the value will be email. So this is really specifying how those tags will be created by Komprise. The last step is merely administrative. Do I want to run this workflow once? Do I want it to run multiple times? If I run it repeatedly, then I can check, I can decide and configure the time frame, the periodicity of the workflow. This is actually a very useful feature. So if you've got, say, a server in your DMZ, you keep a DMZ to make some services available on the public internet, but it's secure, it's sequestered. You may want to scan that DMZ maybe once a week just to make sure there's no leakage of sensitive data out on that DMZ. And you notice we have this option here. You could, if you like, scan all the data on the DMZ each week. But it might make sense just to run it on new data, where new data is defined as data that has been created or modified since the last time we ran our scan. So we're keeping track of when we scan. We'll compare dates of data that we're scanning. And if it's new, we'll scan it. Otherwise, we won't. And that can definitely help optimize the performance of your scan. You can decide to start the workflow automatically as soon as you're done with the wizard, or you can start it manually yourself. You have the option. In this case, I'll start it automatically. I'll have a new workflow name. I'll call it a test scan. And just let's pretend I was doing the DMZ, even though I was using an engineering data query. But just for fun, we'll call it scanning the DMZ. I can give it a description. Finally, I review the configuration, and then I go. Now the workflow is set up. Since I set it to start automatically, it's already running. I will see the progress bar here over time as it's going, and I can hover over it and see the progress this way. I can also dive into the details of the workflow as I showed before. It's running. Here's the name. There's a description. The name is at the top. I'll get some information about the current run. So it's already processed 53,000 files. 695 have been found in the DMZ or in the engineering share with sensitive data. So that's always alarming. You don't want to see this number grow very high. And at the bottom, you see some information about the configuration. Now, the meat of the result is in deep analytics. So as the scan is running, as it's searching those files for sensitive data, it's tagging those files. And at any time, you can go to deep analytics and create a new query to find that data. So I go to deep analytics, I can see all my existing queries, but I can create a new query. And I want to search for those Komprise tags. And again, tags are key value pairs. I can search for any of the keys that exist, in this case, PII, and I can start to see that some files have already been tagged. In fact, I've run other workflows that have tagged other things like Visa credit card, MasterCard, Discover. But in this case, I was searching for emails and general credit cards. I can add those tags. Now, Deep Analytics is going to search my data state for files that have these tags. And these are the files that are now suspected of having PII. And of course, it may run for a while, but in general, the results will appear here. I can always edit the query if I like, if I wanted to expand it to more keys, or for example, if I want to just narrow down the search. But again, Deep Analytics will run, find those results. When the results appear, you can click on Detailed List of Files. You can actually save this query and then use this query to mobilize data. And that's one of the features that Komprise offers that many other sensitive data scan systems don't provide. Not only do we log the results by tagging those results in Deep Analytics, you can then mobilize that data by putting it in a plan. You can tier the data, you can copy the data, you can confine the data, get that sensitive data out of any potential end user's access. So we provide the ability to then remediate what you found in sensitive data. So I'll stop sharing here and go back to the slides, Darren.
Yep. And let's a couple of questions that came in. Let's hit those as well, Paul. So the first one is, as you were talking about modified date, will a modified file be considered new data?
Yes, any file that was modified since the last time we ran, we'll consider it as new data and we'll rerun and relook at it.
Okay. And there's a question about performance, but I think you're going to hit that as you go through some of these best practices. So,
exactly.
Okay. You know, one of the things I wanted to say is every time we talk about smart data workflows with customers and partners, we find new use cases, and you tell us some interesting things that you're thinking about that might make sense in your organization. You've seen some of the tagging demo, classifying sensitive data is really important. Of course, protecting sensitive data and other uses is interesting. Maybe you can talk about that one, Paul. But also AI. AI is something that most of our customers are preparing for, thinking about, not necessarily, knee deep in a production use case, but it's coming. So some of these features of being able to harness and really tap into all of that unstructured data across your organization and then doing something valuable with it is increasingly going to be relevant. So that's why we'd love to talk to you more about your use cases. So reach out to your customer success team. We'd love to kind of learn from you on ones that are interesting. But let's go into, do you want to mention anything about protecting sensitive data and other uses, Paul, and then some other best practices?
Yes, we've heard that from a lot of customers. This is actually the broadest category. After they classify it, they need to protect it. And it really varies across organizations because a lot of them are either still in the classifying phase or some of them have already started to protect it. And we've heard in some cases they're tiering data, but they're not supposed to tier data to the cloud that has sensitive information. So they need to sequester that. Or maybe it's the reverse. They have data that's sensitive and they want to tier it to a specific place that's protected. So in both cases, we can help them. Sometimes legal hold is another area of sensitive data information. Some legal hold has to have that sensitive data information. They want to make sure they're controlling it right. In other opposite cases, they don't want the legal hold data to have sensitive information. So they want to scan it first, scrub it, clean it, and then make sure that the right data is held. Same thing with migrations or copying. You may or may not want the sensitive data to go, and we can help you find the sensitive data and then decide what's the right thing to do with that data. And then finally, in a lot of cases, they need to find it and then immediately confine it or even delete it because it's in the wrong place. They have the authoritative copy in the right place, in the HR drive, in the clinical data drive, patient area. But where it's not supposed to be, it's got to be dealt with immediately. And we can help them do that very quickly.
All right. So let's just go through a few best practices.
Absolutely. So again, I want to stress that Komprise is not pivoting it to become a security company. We are all about unstructured data management, and we're introducing security sensitive data scanning because it helps our customers, our users, manage their unstructured data better. So you don't want to use Komprise and set it off on all your data state, all your 47 petabytes, and find all the sensitive data. That's not a good use case for Komprise. What we'd like to help you do is optimize what you scan and what you scan for to make your jobs run very efficiently, very tactically as you're working with your unstructured data. So for example, what you scan has a great impact on the performance. The more files, obviously, the longer it will take. So you want to focus probably first where, as I mentioned earlier, where sensitive data should not be. There are lots of places where it should be. That's fine. You're controlling it. Leave that alone. Look for places it shouldn't be, like your DMZ, like R&D storage, like QA, quality assurance storage, like research data, places that should be fully cleansed of sensitive data, you can now verify that that's true. You can also make sure that you search specific data types that are suspected of having sensitive information. And that is really what we focused on in our general availability, limiting the file types that we support so that we're not opening files that shouldn't or probably don't have sensitive information. So that can definitely help. And then what you scan for can actually help the scanning process as well. So as I mentioned, we have 68 different types of PII that we know about that are enabled. You could select them all, but just mentally think that that's essentially searching each file 68 times for each sensitive data type. So you want to be strategic about what you search for and search for the things that are probably most likely to be there, or the things you're most concerned about, like country-specific personal data. If you're in the US personal data. If you're in Europe, you may search for passports of EU citizens. Financial data, credit card numbers, personal IDs, national IDs, email addresses, things like that. Focus your search, and that can really help improve the performance of your search. Another set of best practices is divide and conquer. Again, don't point Komprise at all 47 petabytes of your data. You want to run different scans on different data sets. Be very tactical about this. So for example, if you've got some use cases where you're sending data into some business analysis systems, or in the use case that Darren mentioned, you're sending data to a system that is now using Gen AI and RAG to augment the prompts that it's giving back, you definitely don't want sensitive data coming out in these chatbot answers that are giving responses to your end users about your company and your products. So any data that's being sent to these analytic systems or to your AI systems, you want to scan those first quickly, curate that data before you send it out. Similarly, you may be sending data to the cloud. You may be using Komprise to tier the data. You may have other systems that send data to the cloud for other business uses there. Cloud services are extremely prevalent. You may need to scan those input data sets before you send them up. So being tactical about what you scan for can really give you results faster and more efficiently. And then in the background, you can search other shares, other drives that might have sensitive data. Again, ignoring the places where it should be, focus on what shouldn't be, set up workflows that kind of run in the background. You don't need those results right away. They will come in over time. Again, you go to deep analytics, run your searches on the files that have been tagged, and gather results. And I left off the word there. Gather results as they come in. Again, use that repeated schedule and our feature to only run on new data. That can help keep your scans up to date. I've heard stories of other systems. They're meant to find sensitive data, so they get sent off on running all the data on those specific clusters. Petabytes of data, they take, I've heard, years to run, and then they run it again on the new data, and it takes another year, and it's just, they said, chasing its tail over and over. With ours, we can only run it, we can run only on new data, and if you're running it on selected data sets, again, if you curate it, you can keep your scans up to date much more easily.
Good stuff, Paul. A couple of quick questions. One is, how do I get this feature working in my environment?
Great question. So first thing, you'll have to contact your Komprise team to request the upgrade. Again, we never do upgrades automatically. We always want to make sure you're involved, schedule it to when it's most appropriate for you. So you'd want to upgrade to 6.0. And this is a licensed feature capability now. So you just need to ask your sales team to make sure they include it on your license and update your license.
Yeah, and it's included in our full platform license at this time. So yeah, check it out and talk to your account team about that upgrade. And just a final couple of things. All of the recordings for these sessions are available on the TechCrunch page of our website. We recently did an update on data migration features with Neha from product management. And then our next one is on deep analytics, and we're going to dive deeper into data tagging with Jeremy. So hopefully you're finding these useful. If you have other ideas or topics you want to cover, please do email us and let us know what would be most interesting. And Paul, any final thoughts on this release? 6.0 is a big milestone for the company. Congrats to you and the team. But I'll give you the final word on sensitive data management.
Well, we're excited to help our customers now. Over the years, we've had a lot of customers ask us, can you help us with sensitive data management? You're already looking at our files. You're looking at all the metadata. You're already there. I've already bought you. It would be great if you can now add this capability. So we're excited to be able to make this available now. Please let us know how it's useful for you, and we're glad to take the feedback.
All right. Thank you very much. Thanks, everybody, for attending, and we look forward to the next one. Thanks, Paul.
Thank you.